Hey there, I'm Pastor Jeffrey Rickman. I'm the pastor at First United Methodist Church here at Nowata, on whose Facebook page you are. And we've been doing a segment for a couple of months where we interview, and by we I mean I, interview leaders of local organizations that are good to support and know about. I've sat down with Corey Davis at the Splash Pad, Bryn and Leonard over at Boys and Girls Club, and Shay and Brenda over at the Beautification Committee. Those are great interviews. Check them out. And of course, with those and with this here live, we want you to like and comment and subscribe because we want people to see this and know about the county and what's going on. Today I'm sitting down with Jason and Sandy, the sheriff and undersheriff of Nowata County, and we're going to talk for a bit about, a number of things. It should be quite interesting. So if you're with us live, we're going to look at any comments, any questions that people have. I, of course, have a number of things that I want to cover. And just to be upfront, I'm friendly with the sheriff and undersheriff. My history with these two is that Sandy called me when she was sheriff. There had been an incident in the jail, and I came in and I spoke with the inmates, and then I started a weekly practice for over a year of coming in and speaking with inmates in a group. Which continued through all the sheriffs until COVID came and I was no longer able to help out in the jail. But it's been a good cooperation. I've seen both of these two in action just so far as administratively, and had many good encounters with them. They've also come alongside my church at a couple times. We have a singing ministry that we have done at the local Nowata nursing home, and they've come and sung with some of their deputies a couple of times. We're going to have a slideshow that we do that shows some of the photos of them singing with us, so it's been a good relationship. I am biased, but I've been upfront about that with all the interviews. I'm biased in favor of Nowata organizations and leaders, and I want to make them look good, and I want you to join me in praying for them and supporting them. So let me give an introduction. I'll start with Sheriff McClain. Jason has been the sheriff of Nowata County since April of 2020. He followed Sheriff Mickey Hallett, under whom he served as undersheriff starting in 2019. Prior to protecting and serving Nowata County as sheriff, he spent 14 years in law enforcement, serving as a detention officer, a dispatcher, and a police officer. He has served under Sheriff Jim Hallett and then Chief Wade Lamb up in South Coffeyville. He served our country for 3 years in the Army. He also has an associate's degree in criminal justice, and he has a wife and 2 daughters, and is a proud member of our county. And Sandy, she has a background as a parole officer for Nowata County. She's been CLEAT certified for 16 years. She has worked alongside hundreds of local people and families over the last few decades to get their lives together after doing time in the correctional system. She did serve as Nowata County Sheriff from 2016 to 2017. Despite being eligible to retire, she was glad to return to serve our county as undersheriff in May of 2020, in which capacity she proudly serves today. I figured we'd just start with the big picture and then we'd talk about some specific stuff. Could y'all talk about features of crime unique to Nowata County? Of course, we're dealing with some national and state trends that are just normal, but what is particular about our county? Are there any trends in particular that you think are important for people who live here to know about?
Well, I really don't think there's any different trends of crimes in Nowata County. It's really the same county to county and even state to state. We have our thefts and burglaries, and sometimes we have a lot of those that go in stretches. Depends on, if we can get a lead and catch somebody, and we get some evidence. But really that's really the biggest issue that we deal with in Nowata County. But again, it's the same county, state to state, is theft, because it's the easiest crime to commit. You can just walk up or walk in and steal somebody's items or whatever that somebody worked hard for and the thief didn't. Uh-huh. And but unfortunately, a lot of that ties back to drugs. Almost every time, people, just any time that I know of, they're not stealing something to go pay their tuition at Rogers State College. They're just not doing it. They're stealing to support a habit that of a vice that they can't get out of. So if you combat one, you can combat the other. And we do that a lot of times. We'll do it successfully sometimes, but sometimes we'll go through a stretch where we're having a string of thefts or string of burglaries, and we just don't know who's doing it until we can get a lead or a tip.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So if I heard you right, this is going on all over the state, all over the country, but right now there is an uptick in burglary.
Well, there's right now in the county there really isn't. We've had some catalytic converter thefts up in the north end of the county that we don't know who's doing that, and we thinking that that there's some going on up in Kansas, Montgomery County, Kansas, and even over in Washington County. We're thinking that all might be tied together to the same person, but it hasn't really made it too far south that we know of. Not being reported.
So there's not a measurable uptick right now in theft and burglary in the county. It's just normal.
It's just normal, or even maybe even less right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm surprised to hear that. You're probably going to surprise me a lot.
But I mean, the police department has just busted up a burglary ring, so I know that doesn't necessarily play it out in the country, but they did just finish one up last night, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good for them.
So, but out in the county, catalytic converters a little bit, and but on occasion, we'll get a burglary call or a theft call.
Yeah, I was looking at the crime stats just before y'all came over. I should have done that earlier this week. But from what I could tell from OSBI and FBI reporting, we're really not exceptional in our crime rates. It seems that our violent crime is actually somewhat below the state and national averages. And then there was only one way in which we were a little above the average. But I don't think many people in Nowata know that despite some rather low income tendencies, we really don't have a super high crime rate. And that's probably partly because of proactive and good policing on your part. So, Sandy, anything to add about crime in Nowata County? Anything exceptional or?
Well, I think the theft is very frustrating for us, and more frustrating for the victim. And when we don't have a lead or anything, that's very difficult for us, because it's going to be difficult to track that down and to stop that. But eventually, it may take time, it catches up, and we do, we are able to find somebody to arrest for that theft, and wondering if they're responsible for more, trying to tie it together. It's a lot of work, because they go out at someone's home with nobody there. People don't have, not everyone has cameras, so that leaves us with 0 to go on.
All right, so one of the things that I know I need to ask you guys, a lot of people talk to me about this beforehand, is and I posted an article about this on Monday. The Tulsa World did an article on all of these grow operations that are happening all over the state. Some of them illegal. I don't know what percentage. A certain percentage are illegal. They are ostensibly funded by the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, Mexican cartels, but they get these permits. They sometimes get a lot of permits that are hard to work through. And they set up they buy this land, they work up the land price, they just pay on cash on site, and then they set up these grow facilities for marijuana. They put these gates around, and according to this article, there's human trafficking involved, there's all kinds of illegal criminal behavior, and it's not like they're engaging the local community. They live off in these compounds by themselves. We know what's going on in other counties. We know it's a statewide issue. To what degree is it impacting Nowata County? Is that going on here at all?
Yes, it's here in Nowata County. It's a big problem in Nowata County, and to date we have over 100 marijuana grows that we know of that are, I guess, are properly licensed. We don't even know that yet. So we are working towards that issue right now. My office, nor does the assessor's office, have the manpower to go out and look at these grows as we need to be doing, but we have a plan for that in the future, that our two offices are going to team up and go out together and then start inspecting these grows. But it is a problem here, and it's more than just the illegal marijuana being grown here. You do have human trafficking involved, and environmental nuisances and public nuisances, and it's a nuisance to the neighbors. There are some legal marijuana grows that are following the rules and following the laws, and the Nowata County Sheriff's Office will support the legal medical marijuana industry. But these illegal grows we will not support, and we will work hard to close. And of course we'll need help from the government with that, whether it be the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics or even the federal government. Jim Inhofe just had a press conference with the Oklahoma Sheriff Association where they announced some federal money is going to be funneled to the state to investigate these illegal marijuana grows. So it is a problem that we're fully aware of, and we're going to do our job and start inspecting and start closing these marijuana grows that are not legal.
Yeah, it's the two of you plus 3 deputies, and then you can call on OBN, maybe federal agencies, maybe the Cherokees.
Yes.
The Cherokee Nation, excuse me.
Yeah, Marshal Service.
Marshal Service. So you have agencies you can call on, but I mean, you're administrating the jail, you're doing local law enforcement, and then you just now said there are 100 of these that we don't know if they're even legal or not. We know there are some that are legal and in good standing, and you're going to support them.
Yes.
But we're looking at you guys who are already stretched thin, doing a lot, dealing with potentially organized crime scenarios, and I think I heard you say earlier it's not just CCP and Mexican cartels, but there's also been talk of northeastern organized crime mafia type stuff. And so we've got those big powers coming into this little rural area with stretched thin law enforcement. You guys are up against it. It's rough. So thank you for what you're doing. And it is stressful, but it is real. And so it's hard to know how much news we hear is just hyping things up and getting people worked up. But this seems to be a real thing that is having implications, not just on land value here in Nowata, but potentially on your safety. And I mean, I guess it's kind of a good thing that they're staying contained, maybe, because maybe that's not spilling out into our communities as much as it could. But even so, it's distressing thinking that within the borders of the United States of America, we can have sex trafficking, human trafficking. That's we need to see an end to that. So thank you for keeping an eye on that and not saying, hey, not my problem, but you guys are really doing your part as much as you can, it sounds like to me. So that's a big. The only other thing I'd say on that, you can cut this off, but there's a law of unintended consequences, and we passed this legislation hoping that there would just be a bunch of local grows, that we empower local growers, but the way that we set it up actually made it easy and amenable for organized crime and actually building them up. And now something that was supposed to save money is costing us money getting federal agencies in here.
Yeah.
So there's just something to be said for good intentions not always resulting in good things.
Yeah.
So.
And the medical marijuana law as it was written and voted in it's almost impossible to regulate and to enforce.
How frustrating.
So a dispensary,
especially
a legal dispensary worker can take medical marijuana out the back door and hand it to a non-medical marijuana person, even a child, and it's a civil fine and not a criminal.
Well, let's talk about drugs. You've already talked about with theft, drugs almost always plays a role in, there's functional drug use. A lot of people start off as functional drug users for months or years or even decades, but there often comes a point where they lose employment. They start hanging out with people that are not bringing out the best in them, and suddenly there's no income. They might have government income, but that's not enough to substantiate whatever habit they have going. They turn in those directions. We had the war on drugs beginning many decades ago nationally, with a lot of laws in place, with mandatory minimum sentencing. We were really hard, and now as a state, different states have tried to back off on that harshness and just give fines or misdemeanors. It seems to be a situation where we're in bad shape if we're proactive, we're in bad shape if we're reactive. There just doesn't seem to be anything right to be done. But do you have any opinions or thoughts that you'd like to share about the role that drugs are playing in our community? And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but are there any frustrations with working with the local population. I mean, clearly there's a drug issue here. I would point out opioid use and methamphetamine, but we've got the gamut just like everybody else. So what, after working in law enforcement for decades here, what do you think is important for people here to know?
Well, drugs destroys lives, destroys communities, and like you mentioned, we've hard on drugs early on, but now as a state we've kind of eased up on the drug punishments, so to speak, and lessen the penalty for drugs, and in the hope that maybe we did it wrong before, so now we're going to try it this way, and this new way possibly could be a solution. But the problem is in 2017, when we lessened the penalty for drugs, the money saved by not sending people convicted of simple possession of drugs to prison was going to be funneled into these treatment centers as a way to treat the drug addict. And these treatment centers just don't seem to be appearing. They're not being built. And we haven't seen one in Nowata County, and it was going to be promised that they're going to be put in each county for the money saved, but haven't seen it. I have seen some drug addicts go to treatment and be successful. So I believe maybe it could work for the right person, but the money saved, it hasn't been put to where they said it would be, being the government. When I say they, the government, where it would be on the promise that if we lessen the penalty for drug crimes, that's what would happen. It's not. And as a matter of fact, what's happened is Department of Corrections has continued to ask for more money yearly since we've lessened the penalty for drug crimes, and we're putting less people in prison. They're closing prisons because less people are going to prison, but yet they need more money for funding. So I don't know where the happy medium is there.
Mm-hmm.
So people now, when they get convicted of simple possession of drugs, are typically just getting fined, which that's because that's what the law allows for. Our hands are tied up on that part of it.
Do they pay those fines very often?
No, not very often do they pay their fines. Some do, most don't. So it's just a revolving circle that people just can't get out of.
Well, and it's something that a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their mind around until they have a neighbor like this, is when you have people that they're in the throes of addiction, and that's what they're about. They have a bad effect on everyone around them. So it's not as though they stay contained. They're taking taxpayer money by requiring lots of attention from local officials. There's a lot that comes with that, where we want to see that change, but the frustration for you guys in this regard, and then me on the spiritual end, is how do you help people want what's good for them?
Right.
Because even if you do build these a facility in each county, getting people to want to no longer be enslaved to an addiction is very different than giving them the facility for it. You can throw money at something, you can throw personnel at something, but if people have learned to function a certain way in the world, and they don't really want to learn a different way of being in the world. Oftentimes we look at issues like money issues, when really it's a social issue or even a spiritual issue, and that's really frustrating for you guys because you're not here as spiritual officials. I am, but people don't come to me. People just stay in their own homes and let this just take over their lives, and when there is intervention from the outside, sometimes I'm sure people are grateful, but a lot of times people are, get out of here. There's a lot of unappreciative.
And working with addicts most of my career, I've learned that it has to be their decision to get treatment. Sometimes, most of the time, because sending people to treatment when they're not ready or when they don't want it, it's usually unsuccessful. But I have noticed, I've been in it so long that I've watched people grow up and they're older now. And this last time that they were released from prison, some of that older group that I'd worked with for several years, they chose to go, and they are successful. So there's some successful stories, but addictive personalities don't always come, with the poverty. It comes everywhere. So I've just seen so many lives destroyed because of it, and we have a new trend that's kind of coming out that mixes fentanyl with methamphetamine, and then, you know, add a few things in there, and this type of behavior is nothing like I've ever seen in all the years that I've worked in this field. And it takes a good week while we have them in jail to get that out of their system. And the behavior is very wild. It's very damaging.
You just have to put them in the birdcage back there, keep them away from others, or?
Well, you have to put them in what we call Pod 1, which is in the past has been called the drunk tank.
Okay.
But it's just they just come in and they're climbing the walls and directing the band and talking to the air, and I mean it's just
I've never seen this
day and night of it, days, nights.
But it's not a new drug. It's just a combination of meth and fentanyl and a couple things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's upsetting.
Shooting up some heroin along with that, it's scary because I could see anyone dying from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and as you know, I submitted questions to you guys beforehand. One of the things that a lot of people know when this is happening in a house. Sometimes it's out in the country and nobody's got their eye on it. A lot of times it's in the middle of town.
Yeah.
A family moves into a household and you just see it go downhill. You see signs. You see the grass not getting mowed and junk accumulating. You see a lot of people pulling up throughout the day. You see kids. And this is where, you know, for me, if an adult wants to ruin their life, I don't feel good about that, but fine, this is America, that's your right to. But whenever there's this, when you're bringing dangerous people around, neighborhood kids, or you even have kids in the household, and they're being socialized by people who are addicts, who are not functional, and they're dealing with people who are high and misbehaving, and you see these rates of child abuse, physical and sexual.
Yeah.
This isn't something that we can really shrug at. It's something that we want to proactively engage and ameliorate and end. But the how of that, you know, people have to want to, and if they don't want to, how do you give them the want? And we would like to incentivize and say, here's what, can we pay you money? You know, what can we do? But the reality, I think a lot of the time is that there has to be punishment, there has to be consequences, and there has to be resources to at least get these kids out of the house.
Our resources and our drug and alcohol rehab centers, a lot of them, they work hard, don't get me wrong, they work hard in that rehab center, but there needs to be something different. They need to come up with another solution in their treatment, because a lot of times what's happening is not working real well. So I'd like to see them come up with something else.
I was going to ask you, you've been through this with a lot of different people, you've gotten to watch them over a prolonged period of time. You did say there are some good stories of people making. Do you have any sense about what percentage of people generally are turning their lives around given enough time, and what percentage of people are just ride till you die, just going to go the wrong way until the end?
Well, I've worked most of Northeast Oklahoma for years, and I don't see a whole lot of success. And I think when you do see that one success story, it makes up for so many, not really, but in a way, because you've worked and worked and worked to get them to that point, assisted them, supported them, you know, to get that to the point, because you can see that that person is a good person. That addiction is just taking over their being, and it plays a role into their criminal activity and their behavior and how they treat others and how they even abuse their families.
Oh, sure.
So you see the whole picture there, and the percentage I'm trying to come at you with this is probably not very high on the success rate, but it does work. And like I said, over periods of time, the person gets to that rock bottom, and there's a look they have in their eye that I can tell this time they're going to be successful. But you always have to work with them on terms of the biggest example I give to myself while working with those addicts is, oh, I see that I always use this to myself to keep me going. You've raised that F up to a D. That's little bitty, but that's something. And so a lot of times you can see that transition they're going to make, and they have to maybe go to rehab 2 to 3 times, but you can see the transition before they are on top.
Yeah.
And it takes years.
Well, I didn't put this as one of the questions, but there are definitely some people in law enforcement that we're the good guys versus the bad guys, and we're going to get them all, and there's this kind of dehumanizing of criminals, and just really wanting to bring the hammer down on everyone they can. And knowing each of you personally, that's not you. You know and love people that have made bad decisions, and as you're doing this job, you're not wanting to bring the hammer down unnecessarily on anybody that I've ever seen. I see you guys wanting what's good for everybody, and making room for people. Okay, so I know of a guy, and of course I'm not going to say his name, who made some very bad decisions and came under addiction, and you presented him with the option. You said, either find yourself in a treatment program within this amount of time, or you will be arrested. But you gave him an option. You wanted to see him do well, make some good decisions on his own, but if he didn't, he was forcing your hand. But you gave him the choice, you know. So that when you give people that choice, and you don't bring the hammer down every single time you can, then that tells me that both of you are interested in rehabilitating people as much as possible, rather than just punishing them. But you know, as a community leader myself, let me just say I am concerned about the success rate of people getting out of addiction, because when you just do the numbers game, it's one thing if they're just isolated to themselves, but when they got kids and then grandkids that are being raised up in this way of life, then you're looking at an unsustainable situation down the road, which is depressing, because once upon a time America had vibrant small communities that everybody knew each other and generally trusted each other, and there was a common shared social fabric. And right now, more and more we see people retreating into their homes, where they make bad decisions, where they abuse one another, and then you got a whole other generation of people to deal with that are, it's rough, you know. And you guys play a role. You guys get called when it's gotten to a place that's unsustainable.
Right, worst of the worst.
So is there anything that you think can be done before things get to that place? Anything proactive that people in general can be supportive of, can pray about, can support you guys in doing, or can do themselves? What do you think is helpful in stopping things from getting to that unsustainable place?
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
And I probably couldn't answer that, except for the trends are going differently with law enforcement now, as far as we're taught in some of our training that it's to get people's attention and to assist them, help them, to treat them differently, as far as, you know, motivating them to, like he did, to you go to treatment. We find that us talking to everybody, like there's opportunities and chances to turn your life around, is working for what we do in our field, and it's kind of a trend across Oklahoma, and like I said, their training for law enforcement is also moving in that direction, and I feel like that has helped a lot, because people there's nobody that I've worked with is not, or him, that they're afraid to come to us and ask us what direction should I go to get some help. I think that is a big part of, especially small communities where you're familiar with everyone. So that's my take and how I've always worked, and I see that he does the same. Well,
recently, so I didn't know if I wanted to, I'm interested to know how you think. Have you read about the sheriff of Maricopa County? Yeah. So he runs the prisoner, I don't know if it's a jail or prison there, but yeah, people, they live outside in tents, they eat just basic food, no air conditioning in the heat of summer. Lawsuit after lawsuit keeps getting brought to him, and he says, this isn't supposed to be a spa, you know, this is punishment for, and the article I read, at least, it was slanted in one direction, but they talked to some of the inmates and they said, I'm never going to offend again. I never want to come here again. So there's this, within the circles that I'm in, there's the retributive justice, punishing the bad guys, then there's restorative justice, which is, okay, you're obviously making bad decisions because you don't have the resources that other people have. So one is hammer, one is carrot, trying to incentivize good behavior. In hearing you guys talk about it, am I right to have the impression that generally you're not excited to be like the sheriff of Maricopa County and just make it as miserable as possible for guys?
Well, that works for some personality types. You just got to know the person you're working for, and sometimes that does it for them. That that type of.
You agree with that?
I'm not knocking that.
Yeah.
So there's some guys that come in where you're just like, okay,
Yeah.
well, you need to go to the School of Hard Knocks, and
Right.
I'm in the position to give that to you, and I will. And then
Yeah.
someone else might come in, and you go, oh, you just need some attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, every person's different.
Yeah.
But the system, the criminal justice system is locally here for any, at least what I can speak for, has unless you committed a violent crime, and even some of those, has always been, let's try to help first. It's always been probation or drug court or alternative court or whatever. And then it's several chances of that before someone actually went to prison.
Yeah.
I know the big talk back in before when we were decriminalizing laws that were, we're putting too many people in prison. But unless you commit a violent crime, all those people in prison beat the door down to get in.
Yes.
They didn't go right from a simple drug possession charge right into prison.
Yeah.
That didn't. No, I can't tell you one that happened like that.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, there's plenty of opportunities and plenty of services along the way with the different courts and the different mental health courts, vet courts. There's all kinds of things, and we're under the same judicial district as Washington County, and those are offered as well. There's plenty of opportunities for change.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been, so I used to come in and sit with the guys in jail, and some of them, I mean, they're at different stages. There's I didn't do anything, they're targeting me, but a lot of guys eventually, if they sobered up and they were in there long enough, would say, okay, they got me on one thing, and that wasn't real, but I was doing wrong and I needed to get caught, and they knew it. And there was you said earlier, you could see in a lot of people, this is a good guy. And what I encountered every time I went in there was all of these guys, when they're sober, when they're just sitting down looking, they're great. I liked all of them. There was only one or two guys I ever met where I was like, you need to go to prison, and they did. But most guys, you get them away from the bad influences out there, they come together and they're held accountable, and they have a shared way of life. In the church, that's called a monastery. That's monks, and that's a good way to be, but these guys that get out and they do wrong, I forget where I started with all this, but I think it really is hard to bring out the best in people when they're out here. In there, where it's all contained, you guys do a good job.
Yeah.
But once they get out, how on earth do you keep? I've probably known 10 guys that have gone to prison, and they get out and they come look me up and they say, all right, I got to do right this time, help me. I'm right there with them. We're good for a week, we're good for maybe 2 weeks, and then they're gone. The only people they know is the people they know. The only places they have to go is the places they were. And so you need this alternative living situation other than jail. A lot of them just reoffend and go back into jail, and it's the same cycle over and over. But I just think the thing I wanted to point out, a lot of people do have the impression that the law is after them, and anytime they get caught on just the minorest thing, y'all are going to throw the book at them and they're going to end up in prison. And that happens so rarely. The general thing that happens is y'all are trying to help them before it gets too bad. And it's not just you guys. I know that the judge as well. Yes. I've seen people go up to the judge, and he wants to help people. He's looking for an excuse to give them another chance. Yes. And when they end up in prison, it's almost because they've been beating down the doors to get there.
Right.
And that's an important thing for people to know about. Because, let's transition to this. There's been a concerted effort on the part of some people in our country to build up attitudes of criticism and antipathy and hostility towards law enforcement. It's partly on racial stuff, and that doesn't affect our county as much because we have 4% Hispanic, 4% African American, and I'm sure that there are some racial tensions, but it's just not as out in the open as urban stuff. But there is a class element to this, where there are a lot of people of lower income that embrace this narrative of law enforcement's all crooked, they're all corrupt, they're after us, it's a way of life thing. And I've seen guys that are outlaw culture, and they're proud of it. And there is an open hostility towards police officers. I was walking with a kid in our kids program one time, and I waved at a police officer, and he said, I don't like police officers. And I just wanted to go, okay, I'm going to talk to your mother. You can't start off life hostile to police officers. So I wanted to just hear you guys talk for a little bit about changing of attitudes towards law enforcement, what national trends have you noticed here? Have things changed, or is it all pretty much the same as it's only ever been? What do you have to say to all that?
Well, really, the national trend really kind of hasn't showed up here in Nowata County locally.
Good.
Most of the citizens here are supportive of law enforcement, always have been, and hopefully always will be. A lot of that was going on, this time last year, the protests and that sort of thing. It just didn't happen here. Probably most likely we're a smaller community and we do try to treat all people right, regardless of race, nationality, or gender, or whatever. So we hope that by treating the citizens proper will hopefully reflects back on us and keeps some of that hostility away from us.
Yeah. Yes.
What I've heard from a lot of the guys in jail is, if they're good to me, I'll behave. But as soon as we used to have a jailer in there, you remember this, he would really throw his weight around, did some kind of abusive stuff to the inmates, and they hated that guy. But they always liked you because you'd come back, you'd talk to him, you'd look him in the eye, you'd level with him. And in general, pretty much every guy I talk to, even if they're a proud outlaw, they say, hey, you know what, police are people too. And if they're good to me, I'm not going to hate on police. I'm not going to try and do them harm. And I think that is kind of a special dynamic of a small town where people, they personally know you guys. You have a nickname that people call you that's very endearing, Beanie. Yeah. And for your part, you're not throwing your weight around, and there's a very gracious give and take between y'all and the populace. I'm very encouraged to know that people in general and criminals in particular are not giving you guys a harder time now. That makes me hopeful.
Right. Well, in corrections, in the jail, if you treat the inmates with respect, you typically get the respect back, or the good the good behavior back.
Right.
So some of them, they're going to act out regardless.
Right.
And but the inmates and people on the outside, they know, or they need to know, and they got to understand that this type of behavior brings this type of consequence. So in the jail, if they understand that from the very beginning, then most likely the inmate in the jail will be on proper behavior. And so we don't treat the inmates bad. We don't disrespect them. If I hear about it, I deal with it and handle it, because you can't run a proper jail that way.
Right.
Your jail has to be managed daily, sometimes hourly. Sometimes we're back there every hour, dealing with a certain inmate that's come in high on meth and fentanyl or whatever. So the inmates got to have a routine. They can't change the routine. They got to know what to expect and when to expect it, and they got to know certain behaviors are going to have certain consequences. And if they know all that and they're treated with respect when that's allowed, and most of them are act well in there, and we rarely have any problems. Every now and then we have a problem, but we try to keep to a minimum.
The other part too of that is the sheriff and I support good training.
Right.
To the jailers, and our jailers are a good mix of people now that is starting to gain some knowledge as far as been there for a while and understanding how to treat offenders, that balance of respect and hey, we've got to stop this, and they know when to tell us when something isn't quite right and we have to investigate. But I empower them with a lot of training so that they can see what could happen, what to be ready for, how to treat people, treat the inmates, a good understanding of what policy and procedure is, because the sheriff has already revised policy and procedure for the jail. So my job is to make sure they're educated in that area and they understand why there's a rule, and it may be, why on earth would this rule be there, but according to Oklahoma jail standards, according to our policy and procedure. So a good training to our jailers is a key to getting the cooperation we need in the jail.
Well, and this is another way that you guys really just have a hard job, because this is not a rich county. We can't pay our jailers or sheriff's deputies nearly as much as some counties. And oftentimes when we get someone of obviously high quality, another richer county will snake them from us, and that's happened before, and it'll probably happen again. So training people up is almost depressing sometimes, because you get them nice and trained, and then they go and they do that job for somebody else. And in the times when I was more active here, I mean, it's always been clear to me that everybody's got a heart of gold who does this. Every now and again, there's an exceptional person with issues, and you identify that and you get them right out of there. So you guys have been excellent administrators, but administering a jail is very difficult. I wish I wish there was like a reality TV show that y'all could do, because I remember just on a daily basis, guys making fake medical claims, pretending to have conditions that they don't have. And there's also real ones, and you got to figure out who's real and who's not. There's guys who, I remember there was a guy who was just overtly violent. He was part of a biker gang, and he would threaten the jailers, physically intimidate people. He would physically intimidate people in his own pod. And sometimes you could transfer him to another facility. Sometimes you got to hold on to him and make the best of it. And that's just the personnel issue. There's also the physical facilities issue. We had a previous sheriff here who came down real firm. This facility is unsustainable. She refused to even, not you, refused to even have people in there. The commissioners formed a committee that I served on that was seriously investigating building a new facility. When Sheriff Hallett stepped up, instantly a lot of attention was put on the jail, renovating it, doing a lot of work. But I personally can't speak. I can speak to the front of the house. I was in there the other day. Looks wonderful, better than I've ever seen it. But I thought it might be good to have you guys talk about renovations on the jail. Do you think it's the liability that some people have worried about, or do you think it's really a decent county jail and that everything's, I mean, nothing's perfect, but do we have a good county jail, or is it something that we can feel good about now?
Yeah, it's a good county jail. It's usable, and we got to have one. So, you tend to make the best with what you got. It's old. It's over 110 years old. I'm just estimating. So, and Sheriff Murda Hallett did come in and fix it and clean it and get it going again. So, but as long as you keep it maintained, keep it clean, and manage it properly, then we can use it. And it's passed state inspection yearly. It's never failed an inspection. So, the previous administrations that was talking down on it, it appeared to me, it appeared to just be really just jail management problems is what it appears. It was in full disarray, and it did look scary from the way it looked. But with some proper maintenance and proper cleaning, it's going again. And it's a chore every day. She works hard every day, and she's doing a great job. But it's work. Sometimes 7 days a week, and the county spends a lot of money on maintenance in the jail, keeping it repaired, and we do a lot of work on cleaning it. The inmates, the trustees, they do a lot of work in there, as they should. Mm-hmm. It's their home, so they do a lot of work cleaning it, but it's going to take a lot of work every day that we use this jail. So, but any jail's going to be a lot of work. And as far as liability issues, every jail's a liability. If you don't have the proper training, like she talked about, and the proper supervision, proper management, then you're going to increase your liability. So we work hard at keeping the inmates safe and keeping the inmates properly cared for, and because that's our job. It's the job of the sheriff, and we're going to do it, and we're going to use what we got to work with. And right now it's this old jail. So we could always use a new jail.
Well, sure, yeah.
And it would make our job more efficient. We could do more with less, and or less with more, however way you want to look at it, and have better supervision over the inmates and better facilities and better technology. So, and in time that will come, but it'll have to be the right time.
Yeah.
We can't just go out and build one with the money we don't have. So.
Well, and this ties into I mean, everything is connected, but we're talking about issues of addiction. We haven't talked about homelessness yet so much, but poverty clearly. When there's such a thing as a local economy, you have sales tax, which is our revenue for what you guys do. When we don't have the resources, then we can't be proactive. We're just much more responsive, and we're in a defensive posture. Something that I've talked about with almost everybody I've interviewed is creating a vision for the future where people are buying locally, where they're working locally, where they're getting to know their neighbors, getting out of their houses, engaging in local organizations. All of this results in a situation. Right now, whenever I served on that committee, we talked about bond issues. We talked about how we'd raise these funds. And hypothetically, we could have bought a new jail, but it would have been millions of dollars. Would have put us way in the hole as a county. It would have taken us decades to pay it off. And it's a question of if we even could have paid it off. So there's something to be said for responsible fiscal policy. You're not saying, give me the moon, give me a new jail, because, I mean, it would be nice to have a new jail,
Yeah.
but you know where our county is, and we're making do with what we've got. But let's aim for a future together where we can have nicer stuff, and y'all can be more proactive in policing. So once again, I would just thank you guys for working with what you've got rather than wishing for the moon, because I'm sure it is frustrating a lot of the time, and it's kind of thankless because the public in general only sees you guys when you're out and about. They don't see the daily work that you're doing in the jail. And a lot of the people that come through the jail, I'm sure some get out and go, oh man, they were so great to me in there, but I'm sure most are resentful and they don't want to go back and they don't want to talk about it. So a lot of the work that you do doesn't get talked about. It doesn't get passed along, so thank you. Let's talk about homelessness. Do we have a homelessness problem here?
No, I don't see a homeless problem. No, there are some that there's a small handful that are, and I'm just talking about maybe in Nowata that are, that maybe go from house to house.
Mm-hmm. Maybe passing through town.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. But every once in a while someone does pass through town and maybe stays all night somewhere they shouldn't or whatever here, but other than that,
generally they find their way through the county and somewhere else.
Yeah.
With homelessness in general, I've listened to people whose specialty this is, and they talk about with men there is still this stereotypical no place, no roof over their head, they're shiftless and wander around. With women and children generally there's they don't have their own place, so they shack up with people, sleep on couches. And I've personally been familiar with some people who have to live that way at least for a time here. However, we're not dealing with tent cities or anything like cities. It's come back to me a couple different directions that there does seem to be a community of people living out on Big Creek that have y'all. Is that a rumor? Is that real? Do you know anything about this?
No, I haven't heard anything about this. No.
TJ and I are going to get in the car. We're going to go check it out.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. I'll let you know if we find anybody down there. But TJ was saying, no, the water level changes so much out there that wouldn't be a practical place to be. But I got a lady in my church who swears there's people out there, so I'll let you know.
Look at that.
yeah, we take a trip down there too.
Well, Big Creek is a big place. I'll do the original research. Something else, I preach at the Delaware church. You do whatever research you want. I was just making jokes. I'm not going to tell you. It's all your jurisdiction. But the wider jurisdiction, the whole county, South Coffeyville has their own police. Nowata has their own police. There are several small municipalities, and then just groupings of people out in the country. Being a pastor in Delaware, I'm often concerned about what I see out there and the situation out there, and I don't know the inner workings of how the sheriff's office gives attention to all these different groupings throughout the county. So I'm sure many other people wonder how it is that you do it. So can you speak to how it is that you, I mean, you're the only line of defense for citizens in all these places. So how do you work that? How do you do that tango?
Well, it's hard sometimes when you're small staffed. You stretch thin. Sometimes we only have one deputy on. Any given
for the whole county.
For the whole county.
Yeah.
Shift wide. Of course, we're all ready to go. Anytime moment's notice. But we have 500 square miles. To patrol and keep safe. So you know, sometimes it's a chore, but we work at it. You know, we don't always. I'm gonna say we're always successful at, you know, every community gets the attention it needs, because we don't. We're not able to provide that. You know, but we do the best we can. If we get a stretch of if we get a string of calls coming in a certain part of the county, or in a certain town, we'll move some attention to that area, you know, for however long we need it, and provide that service. So, and that's kind of really what we do. And but I try to stress to the deputies to, you know, get out to the rural areas, or get to the small towns. And when we had, and this summer we've had, actually, with the staffing we've had, we've been able to get 2 on, sometimes more, per shift. So we are trying to improve it for the time being, but, you know, our staffing goes up and down. So, but we're
always here.
Yeah. No, but we just don't. We don't always get everybody the attention that they need, but we do work hard at it.
Yeah, I wish there was more to say about it, but it really is, you know, limited resources, limited personnel,
Yes.
and then everything's so spread out, you know. And as we're talking about, there's 100 grows now that you're trying to keep attention on, and
Yeah.
a jail you're managing. You're only 2 people, and you have deputies, but you just said the number of deputies, availability of deputies changes from time to time. So
we have 3 deputies, so we do work at it. And like I said, we keep track of the calls. So, and if we're getting a set of calls in one particular area, then we know we need to focus on that area and try to eradicate that. So.
Yeah.
And it helps tremendously that he's built a good relationship with both city office.
Yeah,
you know.
both police departments go out in the country and help us often.
do they really?
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't
Oh,
even
yes.
know if that was legal.
Yes, we have agreements with them.
Yeah.
And they respond if the deputy is here at the office doing a report or something, or whatever, and a call comes in up in South Caulfield, goes out into the country. First responds for us, and
Well,
Nowata
also-
does the same.
You alluded earlier to the fact that you are able to call on OBN and perhaps some other agencies as well whenever there
Yes.
needs to be some cooperation or some help from the outside. So,
We did that just not long ago.
did you?
Yeah, Cherokee Nation, they come help on occasion.
Oh yeah, they have law enforcement.
Yeah.
Such an interesting. I didn't always live in Oklahoma, so that's not. I'm sure there's other parts of the country that are like that, but you can't take that for granted everywhere. So that's wonderful. Let's talk about. So we've talked about addiction, crime, all these things, and how a lot of people will see a household that's in trouble, that needs attention. You guys are a limited force, and even though you can call on other agencies to help out, perhaps there is a role for citizenry to play in helping you guys out. And I know you would never ask, you know, go in guns blazing to your neighbor's house or anything like that. But if there are people that know that there's a problem property where there's things that are going on that should not be going on, and usually that comes with drugs, is there a role for neighborhood watches, for individual citizens to help you guys collect information, know who to pay attention to, help get the ball rolling on these properties where bad things are happening? You know, what can people do? Surely we're not just supposed to sit and twiddle our thumbs and hear no evil, see no evil, say no evil. So what can we do?
Well, call is the main thing. Call us with any information that somebody has. You know, if someone has moved in next to them and something don't seem right, then just call, and we log every call that comes in and send a deputy to calls that when people call in to go look or listen or go talk, whatever they need to do. So you know, the citizens sometimes are our eyes and ears, especially of their communities. So that's the number one advice I can give, is to call us with any information they have, whether they think it's important or not, you know, whether they think it's something we need to look at or not. Just call and report.
And it should go without saying, but it might be good to say, anyone who calls in, it's anonymous. It doesn't get passed along. Hey, your neighbor over there called us in on you. Does it?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
It doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't.
It's
So,
confidential.
Yeah, confidential, and you know, and that's how, you know, a lot of communities band together and And then some of them do have neighborhood watches, and they do watch and report. It's the same here.
Is
You
there
know?
anything? So I know one guy caught up in who's tied up to a neighborhood watch. Generally, those are helpful, and you're glad they're there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. So of course, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and basically every neighborhood is a watch. You know, so
Supposed to be.
yeah. I mean, someone sees something, they call.
So if somebody calls your office once on a problem property and it doesn't seem like anything is happening, it still continues to go on. What's good for that person to know who's made that one call and they don't see anything happening? What's there to be said to them?
Well, sometimes they don't see anything happening. That doesn't necessarily mean there's not anything happening. So I mean, we'll get a call on the house that we don't even, not even on our radar. And so we start watching, and the deputy may come out and drive around and look, you know, and maybe can't see or do anything at that moment because they're not observing a crime, so to speak. But they'll know what vehicles are in the driveway or who's just left or whatever. So it seems like nothing's happening or it's taking a long time or whatever. But you know, a lot of times there is something happening behind the scenes that the general public's not seeing.
Okay. That's a helpful thing to know. You know, people only see what they see.
Right.
And then they fill in the blanks with whatever's in their head.
Right.
So, but also sometimes, surely, with how stretched thin you are, surely a property gets reported, it gets checked out once, and then there are other priorities. And so, is it wrong for them to call again, or would you urge them to keep
No.
calling and bringing your attention to it?
I urge them to call every time.
Okay.
Every time.
Okay.
And we have some that do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's great.
Good.
So
I just think that sort of thing needs to get said. People like me worry about annoying people, but you're saying
No.
go ahead and annoy us.
No.
Just go ahead and call. It's better to be
Yeah.
safe than sorry.
yeah,
Yes.
because we may not know something's going on
Right.
until they call.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I wanted to give you guys a chance to brag on the team you have in place right now, and I know that there's always turnover, but is there anyone that you'd like to brag on? You can say names or you can just say we've got an awesome person, but I know you two are the stars of the show, but you look good because of your team around you. So who
Right.
would you like to lift up? What would you like the community to know about the team you've got over there?
well, you know, I could go talk all day about our team over there, all of them, because they all work hard, too hard, for no money. So, you know, and I'm appreciative of that. And like I said, I could talk, you know, a lot about that. So the entire jail staff, the entire dispatch staff, our dispatch supervisor, Melissa Morris, she's hard in there, several hours. She runs short staff in there, so she, you know, but again, all of them, you know, I could go on. They work hard. She's
Yeah.
doing a good job in the jail. So we don't have a jail administrator, so she's pulling double duty with that, and that's a full-time job in itself. So, you know, I'm very appreciative of our staff, all of them. So she might be able to elaborate a little more on it. So,
Well, I'm thankful that we have they're for the most part stable. Like they understand that they're that one person. They're it. Show up on shift. So I'm very grateful to them that they're so dedicated. And then again, you know, we'll have openings down the line or whatever, but offering them training. I'd like to mention the jail staff because they're each assigned a certain duty, and all of them are excelling at a special duty, not just their jailing duty, a special duty, whether it be a training coordinator or getting, you know, something going, and they're all excelling. They're all excited. They're helping their co-workers. They don't come in and do their shift and leave. They come in and they make sure that everybody is safe and sound, and if they could help anywhere else before they leave. So I feel pretty lucky with the jail staff right now.
It's probably a pretty rare thing to be able to get quality when you're not willing to pay top dollar, you know.
Yes.
And it's not that you're not willing, it's you're not able. You know, your hands are tied so far
Right.
as I'm sure you'd pay them all $1 million if you could.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy job. It's often a thankless job, and you don't have to work in a jail to work in a toxic environment.
Right.
But jails are dealing with people that are coming out of toxic places, often out of their mind, and so the kind of people that work there, daily basis, they're dealing with just toxic stuff that they have to
Yes.
process together, and then when they go home, it's just a hard thing, and that bleeds out to everything. So you guys, even though your job is not seen as a spiritual job, how can you not be dealing with spiritual struggles all the time? You know,
Exactly.
so it's just,
Right.
I can't imagine how you do it. I was in there for an hour and a half every week, and even then, I would go home going, that is such a worthy place to work. I could not do this full time every week, you know. So
We have to remember, he gives us gifts
Yeah.
to be able to do what we do. So
Yeah.
that's how I look at it.
well,
I'm
and
fulfilling my mission.
you are. So it's just a hard thing because, okay, so the person in my position, and this isn't supposed to be an interview about me, but I'm the one doing it. In church, one of the things that we insist upon is that Christ is essential for knowing God, and essential. And I was a first responder as a firefighter here in town for a little over a year, and then I was in the jail for a long time, and I've gotten to know a lot of first responders. And one of the things that's just so clear to me is pretty much every single first responder is talking to God all the time. There's a relationship there, but it's very rare that it's a relationship where the Bible is a big part of it or where the church is a big part of it. Usually it's me and God, and we got things to work out, and I got some damage here, but you know, and that's the number one thing I really want for first responders all over, but especially in our town to have. It's unfortunate that a lot of times they're not connected to a community of faith that can pray for them and support them, because there are hard times that y'all see things that people in general don't see. You encounter things on a sometimes daily basis that just are awful, and it would be so beneficial to have a community around each of you. It doesn't have to be the same church, although I'd love it if you all came to my church. But so often you're just isolated individually, and you have this gallows humor that you use to cope in the short term. You go home and you may or may not cope with your spouse or your kids. A lot of people, it builds up for years and years, and then so it's something where y'all don't get to go home and take a shower and just put it all down and you're unaffected by it. It's something that you'll carry day after day, week after week, year after year. And of course, some of that is God gives you the strength that you need. But some of the truth also is that there's damage that's accumulating inside of a lot of people.
Oh no.
So-
Got a lot of damage.
Well, and maybe your process, I don't know either of you well enough to assess you personally, but I know generally speaking, as I've gotten to know first responders, I'm just praying all the time, Lord, please help heal them, because I know that they're not getting healing with me at my church, and I don't know where they're getting healing. So,
Yeah. Well, we've recently kind of started something, and the next one I'll invite you to come with us. But for the whole county and some of the things that we've seen, we had 2 or 3 fatality accidents right together, and that was difficult. So Chip Campbell, who's one of our reserves, he's very good at processing things and kind of putting together a crisis, what would you call it, crisis team
Yes, debriefing.
debriefing. And so
Critical incident stress debriefing.
yeah, we all were there together, EMS, the fire station, and us, and whoever was involved and wanted to come. We were able to sit there and talk it through, and it was very good for all of us, and relationship building for all of us.
good.
So I'll invite you to the next one. We could definitely.
I'd
have
be
you.
honored to be there, and I can just be a fly on the wall. But I'm very glad that y'all are processing together, and it builds up this interagency trust and cooperation when you're not just there for the emergency, but also for the debrief and healing after. So I think that's wonderful. Let's 2 more questions. One is going to be, are there any organizations or people outside of your department, just in the community, that have been supportive that you'd like to acknowledge? And then the last question will be, what can churches in particular do that would be helpful to what you do? So let's talk about outside of the sheriff's department, who have been good supporters that you'd like to acknowledge?
Well, we work very well, and it takes a lot of time and effort to always build a relationship with the Department of Human Services, Department of Corrections, and other agencies around us, that work with children and work with parents, the same. I'm on the board of Grand Lake of Mental Health, so those.
You're on the board there?
Yes.
I didn't know this. Okay.
Yes, so some of those things, we'll get to share and build those relationships that together we can help a family. And that's very important for a smaller community. And I've been fortunate to work with them for many years. So trying to carry on that relationship building. So, when we need those players, whether they work with children or whatever, one phone call away and they're there to assist us. So relationship building is very important for our community, and we do that. And it's difficult sometimes because we don't always agree, but we together, not only just law enforcement, but we wear many hats. So together, working as different agencies in different capacities, I think we're doing very well in that area right now. And I appreciate those players that come over here, whether they are stationed in Bartlesville, but they come over here to work with us. We try to just make sure we get to know each other, make sure that we have each other's phone number, so that when an instance comes up, we can help wherever we need to help, bringing in those people we need to. If I answered your question right.
No, you did, and that does overlap with. Surely you guys know the Resource Council is a monthly meeting of a lot of those agencies, and people from Bartlesville and even Tulsa come out and just kind of share resources. And we can always do more, we can always do better, but I just love knowing that you're plugged into that locally with a lot of those agencies. Yeah. Is there anything else to add to that, Sharon?
No, I think she hit it real well. We can't service and support the community alone, so we need help with that. Yeah. And because we provide one service where we can call another service agency to provide this, and when you combine it all together, then we can properly service and support the community.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when we're first responders, we may see something out there in an area that we could assist, that it's not criminal, and to assist, we have that relationship built with somebody that can assist, then we can help that family. Maybe part of our job, maybe not, but I think that's how we do things here. So.
Yeah, well, and as you're talking, it's so abundantly clear. You need not just a firm hand on the wheel, but you need a consistent hand on the wheel. And so I moved here a little more than 6 years ago, and since then we've had several superintendents of schools, we've had several sheriffs, we've had several pastors go in and out of churches, and Methodist churches are supposed to have pastors that come and go frequently. But something that's been clear to me is we need consistent leadership in the community at the heads of our institutions that get along well with one another. So we've had some firm hand on the wheel people who didn't get along well with other people. We need people who share the glory, share the responsibility, and honestly, I mean, unless you're just the best actors I've ever seen, that's what you're doing.
Well, I'd like to brag on him.
Please.
He's a perfect fit for our county. We've learned from very experienced people, meaning Jim and Mickey Howlett. Both of us have, learned from them, taken their knowledge and then added the new technology coming forward, things like that. He knows exactly what to do, and he's got the experience that has, I've learned a lot from him, and he's got the experience to spread across, and he knows how he wants the office ran, and my job is to fulfill that. And I couldn't brag on him more, that he's open and honest enough to make sure that we're doing the right thing and that we're following the policy and things like that. And I appreciate that, because when you follow the rules, you always get good results. So
we would hope. The thing I would say for you, Jason, is I've seen you in a position in the court and outside where you could have thrown your weight around, and a lot of people in your shoes would have. There was a guy one time that you pulled over, and DA was trying to charge him with he sped off without your permission when it was kind of close, and they could have, if you'd said something different, they could have charged him with assault on an officer. But you are on the stand, you said, I don't think he's trying to hurt me. And your demeanor, you didn't want to hurt him any more than you had to. You were just there to speak the truth in a way that was helpful. And there's just, I really don't think there are a lot of people in law enforcement that have that discernment. And I certainly appreciate it, because we do need to know that our sheriff wants our people to do well. And so you guys are a great team, and I think it's probably inappropriate for me to say, I hope you're sheriff forever and any challenges are defeated or anything like that. But I am very happy that we have you guys at the helm, and I'm personally committed to praying for you guys and supporting you. But I'm not the only preacher in town. This isn't the only church in town. What can our churches and pastors and spiritual people in this town do to support and lift you guys up? Prayer is obvious, but is there anything that you would ask our churches in particular to consider, think about, know about you guys?
Well, I would like to see, more churches maybe be aware of what we're dealing with, and see where they could maybe fit in to help us as far as over there, as far as first responders. We welcome any phone calls or anybody to want to come and talk to us, any churches, anything like that. I'm always available to do that. But specifically, prayer is probably the number one, because every day we wake up making sure nothing goes wrong, making sure we're doing the right thing. So
yeah, and churches are in a position where they can provide the counseling and the guidance to some of these people that don't know where they're going or where they're coming from or what's going on in their life. And so, the church is a good resource for that, as far as but just as another, like we're talking about relationships with other agencies, but the church is a part of that puzzle that can help us in the field or even in the jail.
Yeah, and a lot of times they don't want to talk to us.
Yeah.
And somebody like you, they would, the inmate might be more open to talking.
When you guys, you can call on me anytime. When you're talking about ways that churches can be helpful in the jail, can you say specifics around that? What are we talking about? Donating toiletries for new inmates? Are we talking about leading? I know in the past, I'd be surprised if you said this is what you want, but this church and other churches used to go in and hold worship services at the jail. Once upon a time, before there was state law, the trustees at least would be able to come over here and worship with us on Sundays, or they would volunteer in our kitchen. We had a program. But what are the specifics of where, churches don't want to try and invade your place, your territory, but in what ways can we be helpful in the jail? Or
well, what I was, guidance to the inmates is kind of one of the biggest ways, because a lot of times they get tired of listening to me and I can't get through to somebody. So maybe it may be something as easy as, you or a pastor or whatever, just coming over and just talking to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes all they need is just someone to talk to, other than a law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
So, someone that can give them a sense of, who they are, what they can do, what they can be. Yeah. That sort of thing.
Yeah, and there's people that when they do get out, they're off the drugs. They've been there a couple weeks. The drugs are through the system, and they're more open to listening about the Word of God.
Right.
And that would be a good time, as they're exiting.
Strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I don't think I've talked to either of you about this, but I described a scenario where for a week or two they're working in the right direction and then just get derailed by old ways.
Right.
It's been clear to me that there needs to be a third place that we can provide, not necessarily halfway house. There's a culture around that's not helpful sometimes, but I think the church is uniquely called to provide a new group of people that bring out the best in you, a safe place where there aren't people coming around that can derail you. And over across the street on Pine Street, there's some land that's owned by the city. My dream is to purchase that as a church, build a little gated community there, and just have men that are trying to get their lives together. They don't have to be coming out of jail or prison, but if the only people they know and the only place they have is not helpful, here's a safe place that they can be in community with conditions and do them. So that's my long-term goal here.
Keep that goal.
And I don't want to pull the trigger on that before I think I could get a lot of money for it right now, but you need the right people at the helm of that can engage those people on a daily basis. Because it just stinks when the only engagement they have is when things have gotten too far.
Right.
And so I would invite you guys to pray for whatever needs to happen like that with me. And I do want to invite you guys to turn to this church and other churches in town for all the support that you need for you personally and also for the people that you're dealing with. And I'm not going to pretend that we're perfect. Churches say and do stupid and unhelpful things sometimes, just like our expectation of police is not that you're perfect. The hope is that we're all working in the right direction together. So at this point, I just want to talk to the camera. I don't even know, are we live now or are we just recording? Okay, great. I can't see any of the comments. Are there any comments that we need to know? Okay.
There's no question.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you joining us. We're going to post a final version of this later where we cut out some of my awkwardness at the beginning when we didn't even know if we were on. But it'll be a higher video quality. And what I want to urge you to do is share this with people that you think would benefit from knowing about our local sheriffs and law enforcement. I've talked with Chief McElhaney about just coming and talking about City PD eventually. But I also just want to have local religious leaders. Here in a couple weeks, I want to talk with a member of this community just talking about walk with Jesus. I want to have helpful conversations here that build up the community. And I want to invite you to be in prayer for Jason and Sandy and our local law enforcement. Something I didn't say that I want to say, I've spent some time watching dash cam footage, body cam footage of things going wrong in law enforcement. I know you guys have seen that. And every new encounter you have with somebody you don't know, that's in the back of your mind. And you know how quick things can go bad. And that's an anxiety that I don't have in my daily life. I have someone kind of weird come in every now and again, and I can deal with that. But the level of anxiety you guys are dealing with regularly, the level of pressure on you guys, I'm just really grateful. And I know there are a lot of people out there who are, and I just want to invite you to show appreciation for your local law enforcement, pray for them, and support stuff like this in your community where we're building one another up. And if you are not attached to a church that is engaged in building the community up, you're very welcome to mine. But I want to be done talking about me. I just want to end with a prayer for you guys and for our community, and then we'll be on with our weekend. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for Jason and Sandy, both of whom have histories going back a long time in this community, who have reputations that are well earned, and who are carrying the burdens of our community in ways that I just find outstanding. I thank you for their setting aside time to make themselves known to our community, and I thank you for the future that they both have in serving and protecting this community. I pray, Lord, that you would help us to support Jason and Sandy and their team at the County Sheriff's Office, as well as all local first responders. Lord, help us to empathize and sympathize with them, knowing that they are on the front lines dealing with people who are having the worst day of their lives all the time. And the spiritual and emotional toll that takes, Lord, help us to be gracious with our first responders. Help us to be proactive and thankful and grateful for them, and help them to feel the appreciation and the support from their community of Nowata, and especially from local churches. Help all believers in all of our churches, all pastors, to keep in mind the men and women that are in the jail that are not doing well, as well as the people that are spending their lives helping them to try and get their lives together. Lord, we pray for our community of Nowata and the whole county. We're not exceptionally bad or struggling, but we live in a time where there are a lot of problems, a lot of anxieties, whether we're talking about organized crime and grow facilities, whether we're talking about just individual houses falling apart under the powers of addiction. There is a lot to worry about and be anxious about. And most distressingly, there are a lot of children in this county, Lord, that are just day to day living in stressful, anxious, sometimes violent and abusive households. And we pray, Lord, that you would equip local law enforcement to know how to engage these families in ways that make things better and not worse. We pray that you would send your Holy Spirit to these households, Lord, to grant peace where there is none, to grant freedom from addiction where people are enslaved. Lord, we know that you hold the future, and so help us to trust you and turn to you in all of our ways. Help us not to get distracted by all of the minutia and drama day to day, but help us to focus more and more on you. Lord, help us to have a future where we have communities that look out for one another, neighbors that know one another, organizations that are robust with solid and stable leadership, and where people care for one another and look out for one another. Lord, we're living in a fraught time, but you're still a good God, and you have as much power as you ever have. So we submit ourselves, our community, our loved ones, our families to you, and we ask that you would help us to trust you in all of our ways and to love you as your Son, to love one another as your Son Jesus loved us. We ask these things in his holy name. Amen. All right, God bless you. Thanks for spending time with us. Have a good weekend, and go worship your Lord this Sunday. Bye.